I don't think there's anything quite like the last mission of Mass Effect 2. The suicide mission, the epic climactic finale, is the driving force of the whole game. And while Mass Effect 2 struggles in a lot of areas, I think all of its faults can be forgiven because of the triumphant ending. From the very beginning of the game, you're told that the enemy plots behind
the Omega-4 relay. No ship has ever returned from doing so.
And so to take the fight to your enemy, you have to do everything you can to prepare the best and brightest and baddest from across the galaxy. I'm a real sucker for this Seven Samurai Magnificent Seven narrative trope, and Mass Effect 2 brings the cinematic moments of those movies to the medium of interactivity and lets you influence the outcome of that final mission and who lives and who dies. The momentum of the final mission is propelled by the kidnapping of your crew, and the sudden shift of ambiance and atmosphere in the Normandy is jarring, striking, and motivating. There's no Kelly pestering about unread messages at your private terminal. No engineers Donnelly and Daniels gossiping in the engineering bay. The sudden absence fuels the pursuit of the collectors far better than the disappearance of human colonies ever did. So when you decide to hit the button and begin the mission, it's the music that draws me in. I have played Mass Effect 1 and 2 a lot. I'm not the type of person that enjoys replaying video games, except seemingly when it comes to these games. I've replayed Mass Effect countless times, which is why even after all of that, when the Normandy hits the Omega-4 relay, I can't help but have a smile on my face. Maybe some of this is nostalgia? No way. I don't need to go back to my acne-riddled high school days of 2010. Rather, there's a magic to the opening sequence of the suicide mission. You've just spent 20 or more hours doing everything you can to prepare for this, and the music knows it. Jack Wall riffing on the main theme with the percussion bass line, and the horns, and the trumpets, and the choir shouting their ha, 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 ha. Oh boy, Lord, take me. And it is all about your boys, your crew. If anything, this suicide mission really highlights what Mass Effect is good at. Strong, developed characters with a simple, if tropish, science fiction plot. When you crash land on the collector base, it all becomes about you and your crew that you've honed and developed. The ending of Mass Effect 2 is your crew, which is why I think the suicide mission hits a lot harder than the other games in the trilogy, because they have to deal with the weight of the Reaper plotline in a more meaningful way and frankly struggle to do so. Whereas instead, like Magnificent Seven and Seven Samurai, Mass Effect 2 centers all the tension and drama and cinematics on characters. And it's no doubt that what survives of Mass Effect is not the story or the worlds or the lore, but the characters above all else. And for Mass Effect 2, it recognizes that and puts it continuously at the forefront. There's one thing throughout the trilogy that BioWare absolutely nails: the space and ship cinematography and cutscenes. They do heck of a good job showing the approach of the Normandy, and the flying shots are cut between the emotions of Joker, Shepard, and the crew. And the music, again, the music really brings the whole sequence home. Because when you land on the collector base, you then realize the potential of lasting and dire consequences. You can have members of your squad die. Some can even die on the ascent if you didn't prepare your ship well enough. Playing through the Legendary Edition, I knew I had done everything I could, but I was still nervous. My palms were getting sweaty about the potential for something to go wrong. So I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw my whole crew assembled for Shepard's speech. But then, again, you have to pick your first raid leader and the specialist. The suicide mission lets you call the shots on what expertise is required, where, and when. This is what you had just spent 20 frickin' hours getting ready for, but it comes down not to the skill of your squad mates or NPCs, but your choice. The tech role should probably be filled by a tech squad mate, and this seems simple, but I immensely enjoy in that you are deciding. The puzzle of this narrative design is basically, did you pay attention to anyone? Like Grunt isn't a good tech specialist and Jack would make a poor raid leader. You're rewarded for knowing your team inside and out. But even then, and this is the magic of it, there's marginal differences in all of this. You can pick Miranda and I could pick Garrus for raid leader, and it just hits differently, and we're going to have slightly different experiences because when I hear Garrus over the comms, it makes me nervous.
Meet you at the rendezvous.
Versus if it was Miranda. Hearing Tally panicked going through the tubes is different for me than Morden or Legion. Because Shepard is your own. This is why Mass Effect is so successful. That even though this whole thing is extremely linear, these small, innumerable flourishes each build to a mosaic of your playthrough, being uniquely yours. And so seeing your choices reflected in cutscenes throughout the suicide mission just punches so hard. The 3-act structure of the suicide mission also makes it extremely well-paced and designed, more than arguably any other mission in the Legendary Edition save maybe the Shadow Broker. You have to go fast in the first sequence to help your squad mate, then you have to deal with close quarter combat in the second, then in the third you have to be the most resilient you can as the hordes of collectors arrive. And throughout it all, there's 2 pieces of music that are such absolute bangers. I'm surprised the Mass Effect soundtrack doesn't get praised as much as it should. The Normandy theme, Mass Effect theme, Uncharted Worlds, Leaving Earth, Spectre introduction are all iconic. And the suicide mission has the best hype music in the 2 tracks, the end run and suicide mission. In the finale, the music of Mass Effect is on full display. When you scramble in your escape after defeating Harbinger, the consequences come back to your crew. Did they survive? The Reaper implications are seemingly less important than the survival of your friends. Throughout the entirety of the suicide mission, I was tense because I didn't want any one of my Magnificent 12 to die. I was worried there was always a chance. Because you can lose squad mates, you can lose a lot, you can even lose Shepard. Whole plot lines can change in Mass Effect 3, and this is where I want to talk about how Mass Effect 2 masterfully deals with consequence and foreshadowing, where its later sequels struggle under the weight of it. Stories in video games are almost always pre-baked, and this is really fundamentally at odds with the idea of a game. You play a game because you want your interaction to influence the outcome. You want your interactions to influence the story. Mass Effect 2 is no exception, but instead of creating this branching narrative tree trying to disguise this predetermination, Mass Effect 2 just comes out and says it. You know the ending of the game. We're going through the Omega-4 relay. You know it's the suicide mission. And I think in owning that, it allows for multiple variables to happen within that context. We know the story is pre-baked because it's pre-baked within the diegesis of Shepard's world. What the player comes to expect is how that suicide mission will be different to them. And in limiting the scope of all of this choice just down to a single mission, it makes the whole narrative experience more powerful. This is why the suicide mission will always be better than the predetermined outcome of Ilos and the blue, red, green of London. None of those will ever feel as satisfying as seeing the slight differences in outcomes of your squad and your commander Shepard at the collector base, because it's also in part of rewarding you for making the right choices and spending the time. The outcome is influenced at least a little bit by the work that you put in. Ilos and London don't really care about that. The suicide mission is the greatest sequence of the Mass Effect trilogy. I'd argue that it is the greatest sequence BioWare has created in the past 15 years. Its cracks only start to be revealed when you play Mass Effect 3 and realize how much hinges on the positive outcomes of your squad mate surviving. You never get
Had to be me. Someone else might have gotten it wrong.
if Morden didn't survive. That idea of pre-baked narrative rears its ugly head, and the specialness of your Commander Shepard gets diluted bit by bit. But if you view Mass Effect 2 in isolation, to me, the suicide mission is a 90-minute experience that sits on a pedestal. When the music of Jack Wall hits, and Shepard gives his speech,
Make me proud.
Make yourselves proud.
and your companions that you've chosen hold the line, when you confront overwhelming odds and through the loyalty of your companions survive, when an escape that stands on the edge of a knife, when you confront the elusive man and tell him to shove it, finally, and find solidarity in your crew, when you see the Reaper threat finally emerge from the void of space. There's nothing else quite like it.